What has been irrevocably harmed because of how it's portrayed in the media? Blind people don't want to touch your face. My sister is blind and half the people I have introduced to her have asked if she needed to touch their face to see what they look like. She's blind, why would she care about your bone structure? She's not making masks. Portrayals of Helen Keller really did this one in. She wasn't touching people's faces to feel for what they looked like. She read lips with her fingers. Edit. This has gotten more attention than I thought it would, so I thought I'd slip a little blind etiquette in here. 1. It's cool to ask to shake their hand. They are not going to know if you want to otherwise. 2. If you're moving from one place to another with a blind person, ask if they want you to lead them. If they say yes, ask if they prefer shoulder or elbow. You become their cane at that point. Let them know about weird elevation changes or in the way. 3. You can joke about it, but don't be a dick. The sense of humor isn't tied to the sense of sight. My sister once pranked me on a plane by taking the window seat so I wouldn't have anything to look at. Legendary. 4. Blind people don't need to turn the light on in the bathroom. For the love of God. Knock. Always knock. People think that CPR brings people back to life, when only 2% of people receiving basic CPR alone will survive. But alone is the key word. You keep doing CPR until the ambulance arrives and they start advanced CPR, which has better chances of survival. And when the person recovers from heart arrest, they don't gasp, open their eyes, and start talking like normal. They might need weeks to recover and lots of physical therapy after they are discharged. Yup. CPR is designed to keep the patient's blood pumping long enough that more intensive care can be reached. You're buying that person time. Likewise, I think the public still thinks of defibrillators as the big, bulky, rubbed together hospital ones that require specialized training to do. In reality, the modern ED is designed to be partially idiot proof and will verbally walk you through the process. It'll even has a metronome, so you can get the rhythm right for CPR. You may not perform as well as someone who is certified, but you may buy them enough time that said person can get there and take over. Likewise, Good Samaritan laws are commonly in place to protect you. I'm pretty sure that all 50 states have Good Samaritan laws on the books, but always be aware of what your local laws allow. Edit. Just wanted to add something regarding the CPR/ED process. Step 1 is actually not CPR, or the ED, or even to verify breathing. Step 1 is always to initiate the EMS system by calling 911 or your local equivalent. They need to be on the way as soon as possible. You can either do that yourself or by designating someone else. And I mean that quite literally. Don't just say someone call 911, point to someone specially and tell them to do it. People are more likely to do so that way. Jaws was massively detrimental to shark conservation. New Yorkers bite more people annually than sharks. I think it's because New Yorkers have difficulty finding sharks to bite. I love ambiguity more than most people. Jury trials. Because of TV forensics, every juror now expects the big smoking gun that puts every bad guy away, and that only happens less than half the time. And one of the sides pulls out evidence that they've been saving for the perfect moment, despite it being a legal requirement to file all evidence to the court prior to a hearing, lest it be deemed inadmissible. I'm doing another rewatch of Law and Order SVU. What can I say, it's a guilty pleasure, and I laugh every time an attorney goes the people would like to enter in Exhibit 5. And the defense gasps, knowing their case is over, as if discovery isn't a thing. OCD is so different from how it's portrayed. It's not being neat. There's many different types and they all involve extremely strong anxiety and the feeling that you're the only person who can prevent something terrible. It can also manifest as a swarm of uncontrollable, horrible thoughts you don't want to have, which make you question if you're a good person. There's an amazing graphic novel for middle school readers called Buzzing about a student with OCD, and it's called that because his OCD manifests as intrusive thoughts portrayed as swarms of bumblebees that overshadow everything else in his life. That's pretty interesting. Not OCD, but I'm diagnosed GAD, and I've described intrusive thoughts while having an episode as a buzzing or static sound that gets louder and louder until I can't recognize anything else. Definitely give this one a shot. https://noflyingnights.com/blog/2023/10/16/buzzing/ I'm a school librarian and gave my copy to a colleague whose child was recently diagnosed. They both agreed that it was a picture-perfect depiction of what they were going through. Individually and as a family, can't guarantee it'll do the same for you, but I'm not doing my librarianly duty if I don't at least hook you up with where to find it. This isn't the answer you were expecting, but the public library. It's an institution dedicated to providing free services to everyone regardless of age, gender, income, religion, or color. They provide so much more than books. You can use a computer, check out movies and music, get help with resumes, and applying for social services benefits. Hell, you can just sit and chill all day long and no one will bat an eye. But the media continues to harp on the mean librarian who shushes everyone. I've spent over 15 years working in libraries. I have never once shushed a person. The perception of what a library is and what it does is so incredibly outdated in the eyes of the media, and because of this perception many people will miss out on all the free services. I've spent over 15 years working in libraries. I have never once shushed a person. I worked at a library for 7 years, all through high school and part of college. And exactly one person was a shusher and even the rest of the staff thought she was a bitch. She also didn't do much actual work. Mostly just played Christmas music at her desk in the staff workroom year round. Now, we did have to kick people out for watching porn on the computers disappointingly often. All those poor bastards who became architects because of the way TV and movies portrayed the career as some jet set playboy lifestyle. And now everything is digital. You don't even get to walk around with one of those tube things with blueprints inside of it so everybody knows you're an architect. No one would even know or care who Art Vandelay is. The plumbing profession. It's a pretty high paying, very stable career that is severely struggling to find and train new people, largely because it's been a joke in the media for decades. For real, in reality there is no gorilla throwing barrels at you while you try to rescue a princess. And nobody wants to have sex in lieu of payment. Ma'am, I do my own plumbing. Hacking. It's not nearly as flashy in real life. Just once. I'd like to see this on TV. Boss, I need you to decrypt these files. Mert, sure. What's the password? Boss, I don't know the password. Mert, oh. In that case it's impossible. Or well, it's likely to take until the heat death of the universe. But hey, we might get lucky if they picked a bad password. I get paid every minute the crack is running. Right? Including overtime. Best I can do is a $50 gift card for your efforts. Norse history. Aka Vikings. The fun part about this one is how you get two common pop portrayals that are both wrong. On one hand you get the Norse are nothing but stupid violent monsters that eat babies and kill people for fun, ignoring how the vast majority of Norsemen were just farmers, merchants, and ranchers, and that they weren't one unified group, but many separate ones that got in fights with each other as much as with the rest of Europe, settled across much of Europe, and had a deep cultural influence on it. Just look at Normandy, settled by the Norse Vikings. And even among the Vikings they didn't attack so much out of some deep hatred of innocent Christians, but just because coastal churches to the Vikings was like seeing a bank guarded by nothing but nerds in robes, an easy target and quick way to make some cash and get some nice loot. And on the other hand you get the Vikings were these super cool egalitarian guys who were such much better than those backwards Christians, which ignores how the Vikings were still deeply misogynistic and ruthless, had no problems with slavery, and in fact, were often a driving force in the slave trade, even reintroducing it to Ireland after it had been abolished there, routinely massacred and raped civilians with no qualms, practiced human sacrifice on occasion, and generally weren't much different than brutal raiders that destroyed countless coastal communities just for some golden jewels. The woman who was sent to the hospital by a McDonald's coffee discovery uncovered that MCDS had trained employees to keep coffee at 180 F, around 20 degrees hotter than the industry standard at the time, and that they had a pattern, 700 plus customer complaints over a time frame I can't remember, of burning customers. If you serve as much coffee as MCDS does, it's a statistical certainty that people are going to spill it sometimes. The jury found that continuing to serve coffee that hot even after multiple instances of people getting hurt was a breach of MCDS responsibility to not injure their customers. That was the core fact of the case. The woman initially asked for McDonald's to cover her medical bills. She needed skin grafts, and McDonald's offered an insultingly low compensation. It wasn't until she was out of options that she decided to litigate. Instead, media and pop culture depicted her as someone who spilled a little bit of coffee on herself and saw dollar signs. McDonald's put a lot of money into making sure this is the version of the story that became well known. Just to add a bit more, she received third-degree burns on her thighs, butt and groin area, which is why she needed the aforementioned skin grafts. The court documents use the phrase fused labia. A lot of mental health related things, like people thinking schizophrenia is the same as DID, or that people with mental health issues are inherently unstable or dangerous. This is true with bipolar too. Massively misunderstood. I'm on medication for bipolar, and I'm sick of explaining okay, but what happens if you don't take the meds? I always just reply nothing good. Apostrophe. Pain care. I was just thinking of the plotline in The Mentalist, where Cho got a severe, unfixable spinal injury that doomed him to forever be in pain. This is what pain meds are for. If we're not gonna use them to ease the torment of serious chronic pain, why are they even being made? But nope. Every pain med ever used on TV is addiction. The writers didn't even bother concocting a scene where Cho took a pill due to stress, not pain. He reached for the pills after a long day of sitting Ike. Something that legitimately would inflame a bad back. And then he suddenly realized he was an addict and flushed the meds, and never again was it mentioned. In real life, a serious pain left untreated like that would cause irritability, poor concentration, and insomnia, to name but a few problems. Choosing to not treat the pain would probably result in becoming unemployable. But he acted back to normal, as if the meds had been the only problem, not the spine injury. Even Dr. House, who did abuse the meds for stress, not just take them as necessary for pain, had an actual severe incurable pain in his calf. So probably half the pills he took were needed. If writers are so desperate to insert pain medicine as never okay plots, why the F can't they use examples where using the meds is not medically appropriate? Like continuing to use them after a brief need, like a torn muscle or minor surgery? By showing appropriate pain med use then telling us it is bad. These hacks are brainwashing viewers to look down on chronic pain sufferers who have a tough life already without this propaganda. Wanting pain to stop is normal. It's not a character flaw. And using meds appropriately is not the same as misusing them. Suppressors/silencers in movies and TV. No, they aren't whisper quiet. They're really just hearing protection, and not some super assassin accessory. Also, they are unregulated in a lot of Europe, because they understand it is a safety issue. The scene in John Wick, when they are exchanging shots in the subway, while walking with an unaware crowd, comes to mind. The crowds in John Wick do not give a single F about violence happening all around them. Maybe John Wick actually takes place in a version of the Matrix that Neo was given to live out his fantasy life after selling out Zion to the computer. So he gets his shoot 'em up fantasy life, but they can't dedicate enough resources to it for everything to work like in real life. The true nature of pirates. They aren't some jolly band sailing the seas looking for adventure. They're desperate criminals who will kill you and take your shit. I love the South Park episode about this. Backquote, it's a lot-e-do. Nuclear power. I feel like the fact that the China Syndrome was released 2 weeks before 3 Mile Island happened was a huge double whammy to the perception of nuclear energy. Hopefully not irrevocable, but it is now much more difficult to hold people accountable for the damage they caused due to that whole frivolous lawsuit campaign. Tort reform and the Stella Beck case. McDonald's hot coffee lady, specifically, were absolutely used cynically by people who wanted to make it harder to sue corporate bad actors. It was exactly the outcome they were going for, and it succeeded brilliantly. Yeah, in what world does limiting potential recovery to $300,000 stop frivolous lawsuits? It stops consequences. Hey, if you're a shitty doctor, you should totally come work in my state. Tort reform capped the damages for medical malpractice at such a level that it literally costs more to litigate the case than the maximum you're allowed to be awarded if you win. I don't know about Irrevocably, but the way autism has often been portrayed drives me up a wall. Numerous shows and movies have ran with the trope of autism being a superpower and that people on the spectrum have genius IQs. I'm on the spectrum. I've had a Rubik's Cube for 2 years and still haven't cracked it yet. I honestly think my intellect is average at best. I didn't go to child therapy for years because I had a superpower. I went because I have a disability. The Predator, 2018, for example. Not only is it a shitty movie, but its suggestion that autism is the next step in the evolutionary chain made me wanna punch a hole in the screen. Edit. I also want to add that this autistic genius stereotype is not only bogus but also harmful. It invalidates the struggles of those who are on the spectrum and can cause children to place unrealistic expectations on themselves to live up to the genius image. On that note, genius is generally misrepresented in media. It's not exclusively an innate talent. It's also a ton of hard work, discipline, and sacrifice. For example, Mozart wasn't just born a prodigy. He also worked his effer off to be as good as he was. And his training in music began at an extremely young age. There's also a recent tendency to represent geniuses as antisocial, which obviously overlaps with misrepresentations of autism. In The Imitation Game, Alan Turing was portrayed as a humoristic, but in real life, he was genial. Lots of shit, but I'm going to list one that's not so obvious. Diabetes, specifically how you treat a low. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and most people don't know the difference between this and type 2, which is more common, but does not typically lead to crashing out on the floor at Walmart. And every single one of us lives in abject fear of having an extreme low in public, not because of the passing out thing. We are used to that, but because the media has everyone thinking you treat a low with insulin. This will kill us before the ambulance ever shows up. You treat a low with sugar, not insulin. You grab them something with sugar. A soda will work. I can't describe the feeling of going unconscious in public, knowing I can't help myself right then, and can't articulate what I need help with, and hearing the words "she's diabetic. Where's her insulin?" I'm fighting to stay alive knowing that if anyone gives me insulin, I'm going to be dead within 15 minutes. Best rule, never give anyone insulin, unless you're their caregiver. You don't pass out from being too high, you crash from being low. Insulin lowers blood glucose. You either offer sugar, if conscious, or you do nothing, and just wait for EMS. There was a guy I went to elementary school with who has type 1, and he's the reason I carry something sugary around with me when I'm out now. Space exploration in the early 70s. Moon landing? Boring. It's been done. Followed by NASA having its budget cut radically. Shit, we could have been on the moons of Saturn by now. Mexico has the greatest biodiversity in the world, but people wouldn't know it, since every media depiction is a barren desert wasteland with the sepia filter on edit. Alright, maybe greatest was the best term. Quick Google search showed I was wrong. So maybe widest is better. I actually learned that from Forza Horizon 5 of all places. The devs explained they chose to set the game in Mexico because it allowed them the widest biodiversity of large countries. Jungle, desert, volcanic landscape, urban environments, etc. Mexico basically has it all.